All right, Chuck, we can just go right into the Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings meeting. Call that to order at 7:17. We have today committee members Kelly, Heeman, and Broussard. Council members Limpert, Schuman, Glassburn, Council President Jones, the Mayor, Finance Director, Planning, Community Development Director, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, Law Director, the City Engineer, the Recreation Commissioner, and guests. We're here to discuss two legislations, 2020-60 for the Pocket Park and 2020-61 for the walking path. I'm going to start with 2020-61 for the walking path. That's going to be a little bit easier for me. And that, as I understand it here, will be for the sum of $100,000 in the grant, $10,325, and $1,500 are set aside from the city for this path. Is that correct, Ms. Lieber?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This ordinance will appropriate the funds needed for the walking path project. And the rules of the grant are that the city pays out the entire amount of the project, and then we submit for reimbursement. So the project budget includes the $100,000 for construction. It includes the engineering, which is the $10,350, I believe, and then the $1,500 for the required legal advertising. So this ordinance would both appropriate those funds and then allow me to go out to bid for this project.
Okay. I don't have any questions on this one at this time. How about committee? Any committee questions? Mr. Broussard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to, once again, as in the last meeting when we talked about this item, commend Councilman Schuman for his efforts for bridging the gap between the city's matching funds. And as I understand it, there was a question last meeting as to how firm those commitments are. And I was recently informed that they are in fact very firm. So I'll just restate my approval of this particular project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Heeman? Councilwoman Heeman, go ahead. I don't think she can hear me.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I think she can hear you. I think there's a delay with her audio. She said she's having a pretty big video delay between her audio and video. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilwoman Heeman.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You may need to dial in with a phone. That's what I had to do.
Okay. Can you reach out to her, Chuck, on her phone and see if maybe we can get her on that way?
Yes, I'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to add to the list, Councilwoman Williamson is here. Okay, well, is there anybody from council that would have any questions or comments at this point while we wait for Councilwoman Heeman? Okay. So we need to wait for her to get on here so that we can do our committee vote.
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Can you hear me now? This is not working. This is not working.
You just might need to mute her computer.
It's not working much better.
Hold on, it might now. All right, is
All
it
right.
now working better?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I had to actually leave that meeting, so I'm really kind of with you, but not with you. My question is, Director Lieber, do we actually have acknowledgement from the county that our project as proposed currently is going to be okay? Did they send you something in writing or they did not?
They did, yes.
Okay. Would you circulate that to the committee when you have time? I would have liked to have seen it before our meeting. And then my second question is with regard to the appropriating money. This is to Mr. Schuman. When will those funds actually come in with regard to the timing of the appropriation of city money, then to the actual receipt of funds from donations?
I believe most of that money's in hand already.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Director Lieber can speak to that.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I think most donations have been made for the Pocket Park project. We're now talking about the walking path project. We have had a $500 donation through Community Council that I received a communication that they will make the donation subject to this ordinance being approved. So I would expect to receive cash for that donation in hand once council would vote, and we can indicate that this is passed and is indeed moving forward.
All right, thank you. Council, any questions now at this point from council? And seeing none, I would like to make a motion to go ahead and recommend this to full council for the walking path. And I ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All
Aye.
right, thank you. That passes 3-0. And next is 2020-60, the Pocket Park. And Ms. Lieber, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to the last grant we discussed, the city must appropriate all funds and pay out all funds for the project and then submit for reimbursement for the grant eligible portion. So this ordinance will both appropriate and allow the city to go out for quotes, bids, or enter into contracts with the contractors and the artists for this particular project. I know council is interested in seeing how we could reduce the city contribution, and donations have been coming in. I'm happy to report that today I have cash in hand, $2,900. I have also commitments of $1,000 that were donations from 2 community groups that also indicated that they will provide, if this ordinance passes, that they will provide those additional funds. So that brings us up to $3,900. And then we also have the donor who had indicated that they would be willing to donate up to $5,000 or whatever, fill the gap of what the community need is between what has been allocated and the city funds and the grant. So that we are not requesting the funding until we know exactly what the donation amount might be necessary to cover the gap, but potentially, between the 3,900 and the 5,000, we're darn close to 10 grand. I continue to think the city should have some investment in this park, even if it's small. So I would champion having some commitment by the city of North Olmsted to show these community groups that have investment in this space that we're a partner in this effort. Thank you.
All right, thank you. However, I disagree with that point. With the flooding we just had and we have residents who are out thousands of dollars from the flood problems we had. I think we have people that aren't back to work yet. We have citizens that aren't back to work yet. We have businesses that aren't completely open. I think we have some businesses might not even survive, that we get a lot of our revenue from different retail and that. And I would like to amend this legislation to be the grant and donations to cover the full amount so that the city funds don't have to put anything in. And I ask for a second. Okay, committee, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have discussion on this before you move for a vote. I think that it's a little more complicated perhaps than that, but I'd like Director Lieber to address that for us. Director Lieber, can you tell us specifically again what conversations you've had with the county with regard to this particular project and altering its original submission, and then also their response, and what kinds of things were verbal and which were in writing?
Mr. Chair, to Councilman Heeman's question, so in the same communication I had with the county, I had emailed and called Sarah Parks Jackson, and I'd outlined in some detail, and I'll forward you this email so you can see her response, but I outlined in some detail each project, the original budget, the proposed reductions, the area of reduction, and how we are proposing to restructure the project to meet the grant objectives, and asked, if there was any concern of the county over that budget reduction, or any concern that we would not be living up to our grant obligations. And her reply was positive that we could make those changes so long we weren't changing the end date of the project and we weren't changing other terms of the grant. So the way the grant agreement is written doesn't obligate the city to a certain amount of funding. But I'll be happy to forward. Sarah Parks Jackson is never one to be wordy, so it's a brief email, but
I like that.
I feel confident in her response that she understood the question and she had the authority to answer.
All right, well, because this one you understand is more complicated than the walking path. It's a serious reduction and a big change. It's not, some of the engineering being cut back, which really isn't a scale back of the project, just, services. So with that said, do you think that, Director Lieber, there would be enough funding in the proposal that Chairperson Kelly is making?
Well, I feel like the proposed $60,000 budget could turn out the project that we hope to achieve. There's certain elements of the project that just aren't grant reimbursable. And so, I think we could probably get up to, $10,000 through the combination of donations. I've had another donation come in by text just during this meeting. So I guess we are up to 4,000 in committed funds at this point, plus the 5,000 additional. And I guess council members may individually disagree, but I think having some city investment in this park is warranted. And I think that having a little bit of city investment supported by donations gives us a little bit of flexibility so this project moves along. If we need any wiggle room, that we have it and that we're not completely defined by what donations we can achieve. But I do think we have a good plan for this park, and I think that we can certainly add and enhance it over time. I think that there's a lot of community groups that are very excited. We've had very positive feedback from a broad spectrum of individuals and groups. So I feel a lot of people are connected to this and are interested in seeing something be created that will serve the residents. So, having a small investment on the city side, I think while we are asking for these donations is to me is money well spent on our part, since it is so small in the grand scheme of the project and of our city budget.
Okay, and refresh me because I'm trying to find it. The city's investment you're proposing is how much?
I believe it is 10,000.
Okay.
Well, it's 10,000 above the grant, and then that would be reduced by the donations that are committed and that have been received. So again, I feel like I have 4,000 in cash and another donor that has indicated support of up to 5,000.
Okay, so again, the city's portion is 10?
this above the grant. So, 10,000, and then we'd reduce it by whatever donations that we receive. So we wouldn't be in it for 10 no matter what. It would be 10,000 minus donations received. But we have to appropriate the city, on the front end, we have to appropriate for all the expenses, and then we would budget for the revenue on the back end to come in. So we have to appropriate the full amount of what we need for the project. We can't appropriate a lesser amount, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. I don't know if I can be heard. Can you hear me? My name is Nancy Brewer. I'm a resident, longtime resident of North Olmsted. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I would just like to implore everyone in the city to consider once and for all resolving the flooding issues. I mean, this pulls your property values down. Even if your basement didn't flood, people hear it on the news.
Ms. Brewer, if you'll
Yes.
stick around with us, we'll be discussing that in the next meeting. This one right now is the Rec Center Pocket Park. And you're free to speak at the Environmental Committee meeting, which I'll be chairing. This is Councilwoman Heeman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, committee, any questions, comments? Go ahead, Mr. Broussard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ever since the weather has broken, the response that I've received unsolicited by residents has been overwhelming in support of this. And I don't like to make predictions, but in this particular case, I'll offer a prediction. If we don't move forward with this, there will be a lot of regret, whether it be on our part or, more importantly, the residents that we serve and are obligated to provide recreational services to. So I would implore everyone to strongly consider this. This is a great project, one that, again, I have not seen this much outpouring of support in quite a while, and I've been on council 11 plus years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. I haven't seen any support on it that I can remember at this point, but council, anybody have any comments or questions? Nobody from council? Mr. Lippert, do you have? All right, we can't hear you if you're talking.
I think Mr. Glassburn had his hand up.
All right, it's hard for me to see him. He's on the bottom of my Brady Bunch page here, and his name is covering him up. Mr. Glassburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure why we're getting echo there, but I do share your concerns as well. I think it's phenomenal that we've gotten this down to as low of an amount as it is, but we do have to remember that we've laid off 6 workers and we have furloughed dozens and dozens more. And right now we're just going to have to be in a situation of priorities. And so doing new things, new parks are harder to present to folks at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glassburn. Anybody else from council? Okay.
No.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Heeman.
Ms. Heeman, go ahead.
I don't know if, well.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, Law Director Garreau, my screen shows my microphone on, but I'm controlling it here. So it shows it's on, but it will not be on. So it's not me giving you the feedback. Just letting you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I downloaded the program again, so maybe I'm back. Can everybody hear me?
Barely.
All right, well,
That's
I
fine,
think
whatever you just did.
I'm not in favor of moving this forward right now. I'd like to hold it in committee.
I'm not sure where that's coming from, except, okay. Whatever that was, just stopped at whatever that number is, phone number, is that what that is? Okay. All right. So, all right. I would recommend that we hold this in committee then at this time. And I'll make a motion. Nope, Ms. Lieber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If council is going to hold it in committee, I would ask if you can still, if you need to meet again or have further discussion, keep it on its trajectory for approval at the council meeting. It would have otherwise been approved at. Otherwise, planning still has to move ahead. We have the schedule to meet, and kind of holding it for, a period of weeks, or if we get to council's break and we don't have approval, I mean, we're behind the 8 ball. So if council does decide to move forward, we want to give us the best chance of performing well. And we're getting to the point where we are investing our staff resources heavily in this project without an idea of if council's going to approve it or not. So please don't delay, if at all possible, moving the legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that you vote it out of committee. You can vote it out of committee with a no vote and get it to council, so we're not wasting time with this. You get it to all of council. They either vote yes or no, but let's get it off our plate, at the next council meeting.
All right, and that's fine with me at this point. Maybe we'll have even at that time a better idea about the donations too at that point. So go ahead, Chuck.
I believe you lost Councilwoman Heeman. It looks like she's lost her connection again.
All right, so I'm going to need her for a second, correct? So we have to wait for her to come back.
Mr. Chair.
All right, Chuck, I'm back.
I don't know, who was that?
That was Councilwoman Heeman.
I know, Mr. Limper, was that you? No?
No,
No,
Mr. Chair, that was Councilmember Rosar. It was,
Oh,
never mind.
okay, Ms. Heeman, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about all of this. It keeps telling me to shut the cam off on the other program. So I just have to use my phone. And I'll need some help when I get to my meeting because I won't be able to see who's raising their hands. Mr. Chair, for this proposal, I'd like to hold it in committee if that's possible. I don't know if Director Lieber can, tolerate another week or two. I'd like to see what happens with some of our other financial issues as they come up before our next council meeting. I would imagine there'll be some finance information coming around, as well as then some discussion that we're going to have in the environmental meeting about, some of the flooding and some other issues that I think might give a different comfort level to some residents. Thank you.
I think while you were gone, Ms. Lieber spoke to that. So, at this time, I'm just going to make a motion that we put this through to council for a vote. I don't think it's wise to spend any city money on it, but we'll let it go, and then we'll see, how everybody wants to vote their conscience on that. So I'm asking for a second. Motion to put it through. Thank you. I have a second. All in favor?
Chair.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, just for clarification, Law Director Garreau, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the motion is made to recommend with a second and then vote no. So it kind of state it in the positive, not to just put it through. So the motion would be made to recommend approval and then vote no, because that means you're not recommending approval, would be the appropriate legislative format to use to refer it out of committee. Because it either comes out of committee with a yes or a no, but the way to get to a no is awkward, but you have to make the motion to recommend and then vote no. Does that make sense?
Sure. It would still go through to next week?
Yeah, it'll go through the next week and it would go through with a no recommendation. If you vote no and Councilwoman Heeman vote no, it goes through with a no recommending no, but it still goes through. So the motion would be in positive, motion to recommend approval and then vote no.
Okay. So the motion then would be to recommend to go through to full council. And
And
I need a
I'll
second.
second.
Okay. And then all in favor? No.
No.
Aye.
Okay. So it fails 2-1. And that ends our meeting at 7:42.